I'm going to walk you through 3 different ways to release some grief today. So, if you're new here, hello, my name is Death Doula Beth, and I am a death doula. I am also a Reiki practitioner and a meditation teacher. I'm also certified in the Nushu group modality, but at heart, I'm an educator, so hence the slides. My motto is we don't truly live until we've been with someone who is dying, and I wholeheartedly believe that. But this is about grief. And because I'm an educator, what is grief? Grief is a normal response to a major loss, such as the death of a loved one. We just have to understand what the word means in order to move from it. So this could be not just a loved one, but it could be something like a move, or if you're diagnosed with someone with a terminal illness or a long-term illness. But essentially, grief is love with nowhere to go. And I firmly believe that grief is a full body experience, but we feel it energetically as well. When we're experiencing grief, the body releases stress hormones and it affects various parts of our system. And so it can come out in all kinds of different ways. But I'm more interested in how grief gets stuck in the body and the energy field, because emotion is energy in motion. And we tend, as a society, to suppress our grief, and then it gets stored and then we don't feel good. And so I see it more commonly in the heart and the lungs area where there's tightness in the chest. It can even go into your shoulders and back, like you're carrying an invisible weight, and especially in the throat, communicating about this grief. And so the goal for this video is not to get rid of it completely, because we can't. It's more so to help move and release and integrate the grief instead of holding on to it. So how can I release this shit, right? Well, you got to feel it to heal it. So the methods that I'm going to share in the next couple slides are fastest, a little bit longer, and then with community. So are you ready? The first method is the RIP method. So we're going to recognize the grief. We're going to put a name to it and we're going to find it. Somewhere in our body, we can pinpoint where we feel the grief. So recognizing that we're experiencing grief, we feel tightness in our shoulders, or we feel tightness in our throat, or we just feel heaviness in our chest. Recognizing that, oof, I'm feeling the grief, and just naming it. I is inviting acceptance. So allowing yourself to acknowledge it without any judgment. I know I'm here doing this, sitting here watching this lady on the YouTube land, and I am seeing that I'm having grief come up. Okay. And so just inviting it in, make friends with it. And then P, practicing releasing it. So when it comes to practicing releasing, it's more so like what makes sense for you. It doesn't have to be something that makes sense, and it doesn't have to be something that's exactly the same all the time. It just has to make sense for you. So a really easy way that I've seen work fast in situations where you don't necessarily have the time to go into the feeling and to release it and to get all messy with it, right? It's the 4-2-6 breathing method. Now it's inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 2, and then exhale for 6. The count doesn't matter as much as the length of the breath out. So it could be, you breathe in for 2, hold for 1, exhale for 4, whatever makes sense for you. In those moments where we're inhaling short, holding a pause, and then exhaling longer, it helps to regulate our nervous system. And so that's an easy way to get it and move through that grief, especially when you're in a place where you are not able to, you don't have the time to. But when we do have the time, I always like the guilt method. Guilt stands for G, get into the feeling, like really get into the feeling. And this is for a time where you have about an hour or so dedicated to, like, I'm going to journal, I'm going to get into it, I want to feel it, I need to move this, like really get into it. So this is when you have a little bit more longer of a time. G, get into it. Allow yourself to feel it fully. Let the emotions come up. Let whatever is arising to rise up. You understand where its root, where is it coming from? Is it from a loss? Is it from a love? Is it from, like, where is it? Like, fully identify it. Understanding where things are coming from is one of the best ways to move through it. I, identify its purpose. Is it serving you or is it holding you back? Oftentimes I've seen instances where we identify with the grief, and that is our story, and that's where we want to stay. And that's okay because that is a part of our story. And when we want to move through it, being stuck in story will keep us stuck. It'll keep us stuck in those moments. And the goal for this, again, is to move through it in a way that's more beneficial and uplifting for us, for this now, for going into the future, not living in the past. And so L stands for let it go. And this is where we can really get into some intentional practices and rituals. There's, journaling discussions, there's questions, there's you can burn a rope between two candles if, that you want to release the attachment that you have to someone. Or, you can smash plates. If you have a rage room near you, highly recommend 10 out of 10, go to the rage room and go by yourself because you can just really let yourself go and let loose and cry and scream and just really let loose. So that's my biggest tip for letting it go. And then T is for transforming it because ultimately, because grief is love with nowhere to go, we now can place that in a place where we can let it go. Maybe it's, through a memorial or an altar or, something that really makes sense to you so that you can turn it into a place of love instead of a painful place of in. And I do want to take a moment to pause here and say, it may not be feasible if this is a new, fresh grieving thing. Okay. This takes time. Grief takes time, and you're going to find yourself going back and forth between the two of, today I feel great, tomorrow I might not. I might just break apart and it might feel so raw. Grief doesn't have a linear timeline. Like you're just not like, okay, better, 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 and then done. Okay. Sometimes we hold on to some certain griefs for our lifetime, and that's okay. This is more so to help guide us in those moments where we do have the capacity to lean into it, and we're in a place where we do want to transform it into a place of love. So number 3 is death. And this is particularly for when we're in community. So with your friends, your family, your loved ones, or even with strangers. It's really interesting how more open we are with strangers than we are with friends and family. It's like we could just be open. We could just be free and there's no preconceived notion. So I encourage, like, if you're in a place where you're like, I don't really know this person, but they want to show up and they seem like they have the capabilities of showing up, allow them in because that can allow for a space for conversation. Obviously, disclaimer, you don't want to share your stuff with just anyone. I mean, it's really important to keep those boundaries. However, don't suppress those emotions because when we share our emotions, we allow for others to express theirs as well. And it's a very, very courageous thing to do. We often think that tears and sharing sadness and sharing like this grief with other people might be a weakness or it's weird, but we're screaming for places to talk about these things. So don't suppress it, talk about it. Sometimes when we don't have the right words to say, we could just say, I am experiencing grief and I don't know what to say right now. Just simple as that. And see what happens. And, it does hurt when the other people aren't able to show up for us in the way that we want them to or that we need them to. And that's okay. However, just keep that in mind as well, that there are some people out there that they're like, I just don't know what to do with it. And you can just say, hey, just sit with me. I need you just to be here and advocate for yourself. If you're in a situation where the grief talk is welcomed and we're talking about it, express what you feel. And then accept the unpredictability of grief. Again, it's not going to wait until you're alone in your house and ready with a pen and paper and like, okay, I'm ready to take notes and journal and get process this grief. It's never going to wait for that moment. It's going to come up when you're driving on a road trip with your friends and you hear a song and it strikes that memory. And so just accept that it's unpredictable. And most people are going to understand that. And most people are going to want to show up alongside you. And most people want to talk about it. So, T, take care of your body and your energy. So this could be like walking or self Reiki, basically anything that's going to help you beyond that moment, and hold space for yourself, because most importantly, it's us that has to take care of ourselves rather than, allowing others to take care of us. But being able to hold space for ourselves, even when those people are not able to show up for us in the way that we need them to, is really, really important. Just a couple little tips there. But the T and the H, those are all like after that has happened, checking in with yourself. How did that feel? How was that experience? Is that someone that I can trust? Is that not someone I can trust? Those sorts of questions just to check in with yourself after that. So that's it for this video. Again, I'm doing a 30-day challenge of doing this long form content. So I thank you so much for joining along. And if you want to get deeper in the conversation, I do have a free school community where you can get more deeper in this conversation. And you will see the first post that's in there. I am now opening the doors for my May training to be a death doula. So if that's something that you're interested in, get into the school community. I have the link in there. So until tomorrow, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.